Tonight, we are going to explore one of the oldest and most tender teachings in all of Buddhist wisdom. It is the teaching of letting go, not forcing, not pushing anything away, not even trying very hard, just discovering, slowly and gently, what happens when we allow ourselves to simply be. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The Buddha once said that the root of all suffering is attachment, and the path to peace is learning, little by little, breath by breath, to loosen our grip. Not because what we hold is not precious, but because our hands were never meant to stay closed forever. This is not a teaching you need to memorize or master. It is more like a warm current you can rest in. Let the words wash over you. Let the stories carry you. If your mind wanders, that is perfectly fine. Let it wander and come back like a leaf floating on a gentle stream. So settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath find its own easy rhythm. And let's begin our journey together. A man was walking alone through the mountains. It was early morning, and the world was wrapped in the kind of stillness that only mountains can hold. Mist curled through the valleys far below like slow rivers of white silk. The air smelled of pine resin and damp earth, the deep green smell that comes after a night of rain. He had been walking for some time, following a narrow trail that wound along the edge of a high ridge. On one side, the rock face rose steep and mossy. On the other, the land fell away into a vast, cloud-filled valley. The only sounds were his footsteps on the soft ground and the distant calls of birds hidden somewhere in the canopy. A stream trickled nearby, though he could not see it. He could feel the cool of its presence in the air. He was at peace, or at least he thought he was. Then he heard something behind him, a low sound, almost like a deep breath, but heavier, warmer. He felt it before he understood it. He turned slowly, and there on the path, not far away, stood a tiger. Its eyes were steady and golden, patient, the way only a creature that knows its own power can be patient. Its great body was low, coiled, perfectly still except for the slow flick of its tail. For a moment, neither of them moved. The mist drifted between them. Then the man ran. He did not think. He did not choose. His body simply ran, the way a deer runs, the way all living things run when something ancient wakes up in them and says, "Go." He ran along the ridge with the tiger behind him, his breath ragged, the trail narrowing beneath his feet, and when the path ended suddenly at the edge of a cliff, he did the only thing left to do. He leapt over the edge. His hands found a root growing out from the rock face, thick and gnarled and old, and he grabbed it. He held on with everything he had. His fingers wrapped around it so tightly that the bark pressed lines into his palms. Now he hung there, suspended between two impossible things. Above him, the tiger paced at the edge, watching with those golden eyes. Below him, a long fall into mist and jagged stone. The root was strong enough, for now, but the man could feel his fingers beginning to ache. His arms trembled. He could not climb up. He could not climb down. He could only hold on. So he did what anyone might do in such a moment. He called out. "Help!" he cried. "Is anyone there? Please, help me." And to his great surprise, a voice answered. It came from everywhere and nowhere, deep and calm and vast, like the sound of the mountain itself. "I am here," the voice said. The man's heart leapt. "Who are you?" Some call me the beloved. Some call me the source. I am what has always been here. Oh, thank goodness, the man gasped. Please, tell me what to do. How do I get out of this? There was a pause. The mist swirled below. The tiger yawned above. And then the voice said, very simply, let go. The man blinked. He looked up at the tiger. He looked down at the rocks. He tightened his grip on the root. Let go? He said. Yes, just let go. The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he called out again, a little louder this time. Is there anyone else there? This little story has been told in meditation halls and temple gardens for a very long time. And every time it is told, there is a gentle ripple of recognition in the room. Because we have all been that man on the cliff. We have all heard the teaching. We have all been told, in one way or another, to let go. Let go of your worries. Let go of your anger. Let go of the past. Let go of the things you cannot control. It is perhaps the most universal piece of spiritual advice ever offered. You will find it in the words of the Buddha. You will hear it from Zen masters and forest monks, from poets and grandmothers, from therapists and dear friends. And it is true. It is absolutely true. Letting go is the doorway to peace. But here is what that little story captures so perfectly. When we are truly stuck, when we are genuinely frightened, when we are hanging over what feels like an abyss, letting go is the very last thing we are able to do. Everything in us grips tighter. Every instinct says, hold on. The Buddha taught this with great compassion. He said that clinging is like holding a burning coal. We know it is hurting us. We can feel the heat. And still, we hold on because the thought of opening our hand feels even more frightening than the pain. Let us sit with this for a moment, gently. Not to solve anything, just to notice. Most of us carry at least one habit that we know, somewhere deep inside, is keeping us from living more freely. It might be a habit of the mind. Perhaps you know the one. The thoughts that circle and circle, especially in the quiet hours. The worries that replay themselves like a song you cannot stop humming. You have told yourself 1,000 times to stop worrying. And yet the worrying continues, because telling ourselves to stop has never been how the mind works. Or perhaps it is a habit of the heart, a tendency to be hard on yourself, a voice inside that says you should be further along by now, that you are not doing enough, that you are somehow falling behind in a race that no one else seems to be running. This voice can be so familiar that we mistake it for the truth. We forget that it is just a voice, not a verdict. Or maybe it is something you reach for. Something you consume a little more of than you would like. A way of soothing yourself that works in the short term but leaves you feeling hollow afterward. You know the pattern. You have tried to break it. You have made promises to yourself and then watched yourself break them and then felt the weight of that breaking. There is a teaching in Buddhism that is sometimes called the second arrow. The Buddha told his students that when we are struck by an arrow, it hurts. That is the first arrow, the original difficulty. But then, very quickly, we fire a second arrow at ourselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the pain. It is the shame we feel about the habit, the frustration at our lack of control, the judgment that says, "What is wrong with me? Why can I not just stop?" And this second arrow, the Buddha taught, often hurts more than the first. Let us explore another small story to illustrate this. It is a simple one, the kind of moment that happens every day in ordinary lives. Imagine a woman lying awake in the middle of the night. The house is dark and still. A soft rain is tapping against the window, and somewhere down the hall, a clock is ticking. Everyone else is sleeping. The dog is curled at the foot of the bed, breathing those deep, easy breaths that sleeping dogs breathe. The whole world seems to be at rest, but her mind is wide awake. It is turning over a conversation she had that afternoon with a friend or a co-worker or her sister. Something she said that she wishes she had not said. A small carelessness, a word that came out sharper than she meant it to, and the look on the other person's face afterward. That look. She replays it. She edits it. She imagines different versions of the conversation, rearranging the words like furniture in a room, trying to find the arrangement that does not hurt. In one version, she is kinder. In another, she is funnier. In another, she says nothing at all and just listens. Each version is a little better than the last, a little more polished, and none of them changes what actually happened. She knows this is not helpful. She can feel her body tensing with each replay, the jaw tightening, the stomach pulling inward. She tells herself to stop. Just let it go, she whispers into the dark. It is done. It is over. Go to sleep. But the mind does not obey. If anything, the instruction to let go makes the grip tighter. Now she is not only replaying the conversation but also frustrated with herself for replaying it. There are two things keeping her awake now instead of one. The original worry and the worry about worrying. She sighs and turns over. The rain keeps tapping. The clock keeps ticking. The dog shifts and settles. And still the mind turns. This is such a small, ordinary moment. And yet it contains the entire teaching. Because what is happening here is not a failure of willpower. It is not a sign that something is wrong with her. It is simply the nature of the mind when it is caught. The more we fight it, the more entangled we become. Like a bird caught in a net, struggling only tightens the threads. The great Zen master Senkan wrote, centuries ago, the struggle between what is and what we think should be is the mind's worst disease. And that is exactly what happens at 2:30 in the morning. The struggle itself is the suffering, not the thought, not the memory, the fight against it. So what do we do? If we cannot force ourselves to let go, and if trying harder only makes it worse, where does that leave us? This is where the Buddhist teaching becomes very beautiful and very gentle. Because the answer is not about doing more. It is about softening into something simpler. There is a phrase that appears again and again in the old texts. Not too tight, not too loose. The Buddha compared the spiritual path to tuning a stringed instrument. If the string is too tight, it snaps. If it is too loose, it will not play. The music comes when the tension is just right. And the same is true with our habits, our patterns, our places of stuckness. We do not need to attack them. We do not need to shame ourselves into submission. But we also do not need to ignore them or pretend they are not there. We simply need to bring a gentle, curious attention to them. To notice them the way you might notice a knot in a piece of old rope. You do not yank at it. You hold it up to the light. You look at how the threads are woven together. And sometimes, just by looking, the knot begins to remember how to loosen. A Tibetan teacher once used a lovely image. He said that awareness is like the sun, and our tensions are like ice. The sun does not fight the ice. It does not argue with the ice or try to convince the ice to melt. It simply shines. And in the presence of that warmth, the ice does what ice naturally does. It softens. It opens. It returns to water, which was its true nature all along. This is what the practice of letting go really is. It is not something we do. It is something that happens all by itself when we stop fighting and simply bring the warmth of our attention to whatever is frozen inside us. Now, it is important to say this plainly because it is so easy to misunderstand. Noticing a habit is not the same as getting rid of it. The woman lying awake at night may notice her thoughts spinning and still not fall asleep right away. The person reaching for comfort may notice the craving and still reach anyway. The one caught in self-judgment may see the pattern clearly and still hear that familiar harsh voice. And that is perfectly all right, because the noticing itself is the shift. It may not look dramatic. It may not feel like freedom, not at first. But something very important has changed. Before, you were inside the habit, looking out through its eyes, living in its world. Now, even for a moment, you are outside it. You are the one seeing it. And that tiny distance, that sliver of space between the habit and the awareness of the habit, is everything. The Buddha called this the beginning of wisdom. Not the end of suffering, but the beginning of understanding. And he said that this beginning is already a kind of liberation. Like a person who has been locked in a dark room for a long time and who suddenly notices, in one corner, a thin line of light coming through the wall. The room is still dark. The door is still locked. But that line of light changes everything, because now they know there is something beyond the room. This is what we are doing together, you and I. We are not trying to fix anything tonight. We are not trying to make our habits disappear or force ourselves to let go of what we have been holding. We are simply looking for the light, noticing the knot, feeling the warmth of our own attention, and trusting that this is enough. Because in the Buddhist tradition, it always has been. There is a beautiful old teaching that compares the human heart to a garden. In this garden, all kinds of things grow. There are flowers, yes. Beautiful, fragrant, bright. Jasmine and lotus and small wildflowers that bloom close to the ground where no one thinks to look. But there are also weeds. Thorny, stubborn, deep-rooted things that seem to come back no matter how many times you pull them out. Most of us spend a great deal of energy fighting the weeds. We pull and we dig and we worry. And when the weeds come back, as weeds always do, we feel defeated. We feel like bad gardeners. We wonder why everyone else's garden looks so much better than ours. There is a story about a young monk who came to his teacher in great frustration. He had been practicing meditation for several years, and still his mind was full of restless thoughts. Still he lost his temper. Still he compared himself to the other monks and found himself lacking. "Teacher," he said, "I have been pulling weeds in my garden for 3 years now, and still they return. What am I doing wrong?" The old teacher smiled. He led the young monk outside to a small courtyard where a garden grew. It was not a perfect garden. There were weeds growing between the stones, and some of the plants were scraggly and wild. But there were also flowers, and the air was sweet with them. "Tell me," the teacher said, "when you walk into this garden, where do your eyes go first?" The young monk looked. "To the weeds," he said honestly. "Yes," the teacher said, "that is the habit. But the flowers are blooming too. And they did not bloom because I defeated the weeds. They bloomed because I gave them water and sunlight and time." The young monk was quiet for a long while. "So I should stop pulling weeds?" he asked. "You should start noticing flowers," the teacher said. "This is what the wise gardeners know. The weeds are not the enemy. They are simply plants that grow where conditions allow them to grow. If you change the conditions, if you enrich the soil, if you let in more light, if you tend to the garden with patience and care, the weeds begin to lose their hold. Not because you fought them, but because you created an environment where something else could flourish. The enriched soil is awareness. The light is compassion. The patient tending is this practice of noticing, again and again, with kindness rather than judgment. And the flowers that grow in that tended garden, they are the moments of peace, of freedom, of genuine ease that arise when we are no longer at war with ourselves. They are the moments when letting go happens on its own, as naturally as an exhale, as naturally as a petal opening to the morning sun. So as we come to the end of this first reflection, let us not try to let go of anything just yet. Let us simply be here. Let us notice what we notice. If there is a habit you carry, a familiar pattern, a place of holding, just let it be there for now. You do not have to do anything about it. There is a saying in Zen, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. That is the spirit we are resting in tonight. Not effort, not struggle, just a quiet presence and a trust that something in us knows how to open. The man on the cliff is still hanging there, if you like, still gripping his root, still looking down at the mist. And the voice is still there too, patient and warm, not demanding, not rushing, just offering the simplest invitation in the world. Let go. Not yet, perhaps. Not tonight. But the invitation is there. And just hearing it, just knowing it is possible, is already a kind of beginning. As the Buddha once gently reminded his students, a jug fills drop by drop, and so does freedom. One moment of noticing at a time, one breath of kindness at a time, one small softening at a time. Drop by drop, we fill. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice how you are feeling. Let your breath be easy and natural. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Have you ever been offered something kind, something generous, and found yourself unable to fully take it in? Not because you did not want to, but because something in you was bracing, scanning, waiting, almost without knowing it, for the catch. Someone pays you a compliment, and instead of letting it land, your mind is already explaining it away. Someone offers help, and a quiet voice inside says, "Be careful." Someone reaches toward you with warmth, and you feel yourself pull back, just slightly, like a hand near a flame. If you have felt this, you are not alone. And there is nothing wrong with you. You have simply learned, somewhere along the way, to protect yourself. And that learning went so deep that it became invisible. It became the water you swim in, the air you breathe, the lens through which you see the world. Tonight, Let us look at that lens, gently, with great kindness, because understanding where it came from is the first step towards seeing clearly again. There is an old Buddhist parable about two monks walking through a forest. They came to a river where the current was strong, and standing at the bank was a traveler who could not cross alone. The elder monk offered to help. He carried the traveler across on his back, set them down safely on the other side, and the two monks continued on their way. An hour passed, then two. The younger monk grew more and more agitated, until finally he burst out, "How could you do that? We are not supposed to have contact with strangers. We have taken vows." The elder monk walked quietly for a moment. Then he said, "I set that traveler down at the river 2 hours ago. Why are you still carrying them?" This is one of the most beloved stories in the Buddhist tradition, and it speaks to something very simple. We carry things long after the moment has passed. We hold on to encounters, to fears, to old cautions, long after the river has been crossed. The body remembers. The heart remembers. And sometimes we do not even realize what we are still carrying, because we have been carrying it for so long that it feels like part of us. Let us explore a story about what this looks like in a life. There was a young man who grew up in a part of a large city where life was unpredictable. It was not a terrible place. There were people who loved him. There were warm kitchens and laughter and summer evenings on the front steps. But there was also an edge to things. You learned early to read a room. You learned to notice who was on the street and what mood they were in. You learned to keep your head up but your eyes soft, to move through the world with a kind of careful alertness, the way an animal moves through tall grass. This was not something anyone taught him in words. It was something his body learned. The way your body learns to flinch before you even think about flinching. The way your shoulders learn to carry themselves a certain way, pulled in, a little guarded, ready. By the time he was grown, this alertness was as natural to him as breathing. He did not notice it any more than a fish notices water. Then, one year, he traveled abroad for the first time. He found himself in a beautiful old city in another country, a place of wide avenues and golden light and sidewalk cafes where people sat for hours over small cups of coffee, doing nothing in particular, just watching the evening arrive. He met a man there, a local, who wanted to practice speaking his language, and they agreed to spend some time together. At first it was just conversation at a park bench, a few stumbling sentences back and forth, laughter at each other's mistakes. The local man was easy to be around. He had a broad, unhurried smile and a way of listening that made you feel he was in no rush at all. One afternoon, the man invited him to a cafe. It was a small place on a quiet street, with wooden tables worn smooth by years of elbows and wine glasses. The light came through the window in long, warm slants, and there were old photographs on the walls of people who had probably sat at these same tables decades ago. They sat down, and the local man ordered generously. Bread still warm from the oven, with a crust that crackled when you broke it. Soft cheese that smelled of herbs. A plate of olives glistening with oil, dark and rich. Sliced meats arranged on a wooden board. And wine the color of dark honey, poured into small glasses with a kind of ceremony, as if the pouring itself was part of the gift. "Please," the man said, gesturing to the table. "Eat. Enjoy." And then he insisted on paying for everything. The young traveler smiled and thanked him. But inside, something else was happening. A quiet alarm was sounding, low and steady, the way a distant siren sounds when you are trying to fall asleep. His mind was running calculations. All right, he thought. What is this really about? Nobody does this for free. This is some kind of setup. He wants something. There is an angle here, and I am not seeing it yet. He watched the man's face for signs. He tracked the man's hands. He noted the exits. He ate the bread, but he did not taste it. He drank the wine, but he did not feel the warmth of it. His body was at the table, but his mind was somewhere else entirely, mapping the room, running through scenarios, preparing for whatever was coming next. After the meal, the man said, "Come, I want to show you something beautiful." He led the young traveler out of the cafe and down a narrow side street where the cobblestones were uneven and old ivy climbed the walls. And with every step, the young traveler felt his body tighten. His thoughts raced ahead of his feet, rehearsing what might be waiting around the next corner. A confrontation, a trap, something he would need to be ready for. They turned a corner, and there it was. An old building, very old, with carvings in the stone that had been there for hundreds of years. Faces and leaves and flowing shapes, softened by time and weather into something that looked almost alive, like the stone itself was dreaming. The local man pointed up at the stonework and began to describe the history of the place. His voice was warm and unhurried. He traced the shapes of the old designs with his finger, the way a person does when they love something and want to share it. He told stories about the people who had carved these figures, how they had worked for years, how they believed that beauty was a kind of prayer. And the young traveler heard the words, but they arrived from a great distance, muffled, as if his ears were wrapped in cloth. Because the part of him that could receive beauty, that could take in the gift of this moment, was locked behind a door that fear had closed a long time ago. Then, after a while, the man simply shook his hand. "It was lovely to meet you," he said. "I hope you enjoy your time here." And he turned and walked away into the soft, wide evening. The young traveler stood there on the street, alone, watching the man disappear around a corner. The last light was golden on the old stone walls. Somewhere, someone was playing music. The air smelled of bread and rain. And he realized, with a slow, quiet ache, that he had missed it. He had missed the whole thing. The bread, the kindness, the beauty of the building, the simple, generous pleasure of a stranger wanting to share something lovely. All of it had passed through him like light through a closed window. He had been right there, and he had not been there at all, because his eyes had been shaped by another city. His body was still moving through that old tall grass, still scanning, still bracing. And the habit was so deep, so old, so woven into his muscles and his breath, that even in this golden, peaceful place, he could not put it down. This is such a tender thing to recognize, and it is important to say, before we go any further, that there was nothing foolish about this young man. His alertness had kept him safe. It had served him well for years. The body does not learn to brace for no reason. Every habit of protection we carry was, at some point, the wisest thing we could do. It was our intelligence, our love for ourselves, our deep wish to survive and to keep going. The Buddha spoke often about this with great compassion. He taught that our patterns of holding are not sins. They are not character flaws. They are the mind's way of trying to take care of us. Like a mother who holds her child a little too tightly, not because she wants to crush the child, but because she loves the child and the world feels dangerous. The holding comes from love, even when it hurts, even when it has outlived the danger. And this is why shame never works. You cannot shame yourself out of a habit that was born from self-protection. Shame only says, you are wrong for trying to keep yourself safe. And the body hears that and it grips tighter because now it has one more thing to protect itself from. There is a quiet teaching in Zen that says, no blame. Just 2 words. No blame. Not no responsibility. Not no awareness. Just no blame. This is one of the most freeing things you will ever hear if you let it land. Because so many of us have spent years blaming ourselves for the very things that were trying to keep us safe. We blame ourselves for being anxious, when the anxiety was a guard standing watch. We blame ourselves for pulling away from closeness, when the pulling away was a shield we built in a time when closeness was not safe. We blame ourselves for bracing against good things, when the bracing was a wise and loving choice made long ago by a younger version of ourselves who was doing the very best they could. No blame. When you see a pattern in yourself, a way of bracing, a habit of suspicion or worry, a tendency to pull back from good things because some part of you is waiting for them to turn, the practice is simply to see it. To recognize it with the same gentleness you would bring to a child who is afraid of the dark. You would not scold a child for being afraid. You would not say, "What is wrong with you? Just stop being scared." You would sit with them. You would say, "I understand. The dark can feel very big." You would stay until they felt safe enough to close their eyes. This is how we can meet our own fear, not by fighting it, not by being disappointed in it, but by sitting with it and saying, gently, "I see you. I know why you are here. You have been trying to keep me safe for a very long time, and I am grateful." There is a line attributed to the Buddha that says, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This is especially true for the parts of us that are still standing on that street in the golden light, watching kindness walk away, unable to let it in. Those parts deserve the most tenderness, not the least. Now, here is where this teaching begins to open into something spacious and hopeful. The young man in the story did something remarkable that evening. He did not fix anything. He did not overcome his fear. He did not suddenly become a different person. He simply saw it. He stood on that street and he recognized, "Oh, my eyes were made somewhere else. I am seeing this place through an old lens. That is all. Just that. Just the seeing." And yet, as we gently explored in our last reflection, this seeing is not a small thing. It is, in fact, the whole beginning. Because the moment you see the lens, you are no longer completely trapped behind it. You are both the one looking through it and the one who notices it is there. A Zen teacher once said, "The moment you see you are in a prison, you are no longer entirely in the prison. Not because the walls have fallen, but because something in you is now larger than the walls." The young man wrote about this experience later in life. He said that he wanted to create more space between his loved ones and that old blinding fear, not by pretending the fear did not exist, not by willing it away, but by seeing it so clearly that it could no longer run the show from the shadows. This is a beautiful way to understand the whole path we are walking tonight. Letting go does not mean the fear disappears. It means the fear is no longer in charge. It is still there, perhaps, but it is sitting in the passenger seat now, not driving the car. And you can turn to it gently and say, "I know you are here. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I can take it from here." There is another small story, very simple, that illustrates this shift beautifully. A student once asked an old teacher, "How do I become free of my fears?" The teacher said, "Invite them to tea." The student was confused. "Invite them to tea? But I want them to leave." "Yes," the teacher said. "That is the problem. You are standing at the door trying to push them out, and they are pushing back. Very exhausting for everyone. Instead, invite them in. Offer them a seat. Pour them a cup. And then see what happens." "What happens?" The teacher smiled. "They drink their tea. They say what they came to say. And when they are ready, they leave on their own. They always do. It is only when we block the door that they stay forever." "But what if they never leave?" The student pressed. "Then you will have gotten very good at making tea," the teacher said. "And that is not a bad thing either. This is the way of awareness. Not fighting, not fixing, just making room. Just saying, 'You are welcome here. Sit down. I am not afraid of you anymore.' And there is something so deeply restful in that. Something that allows the whole body to exhale. The Buddha taught that suffering comes not from the difficult things that visit us, but from the war we wage against them. We suffer because we resist. We suffer because we clench against what is already here. And peace, he taught, comes from the most radical act imaginable. Allowing things to be exactly as they are, even for just one breath, even for just one heartbeat. When the young traveler stood on that street and saw his own fear clearly, he was, without knowing it, opening the door. He was not yet pouring tea. That would come later, with practice, with patience, with many more evenings of golden light and many more moments of recognizing, "Oh, there it is again. There is the old habit. There is the old city, still shaping what I see." But the door was cracked open, and a little light was coming through, and that made all the difference. So perhaps tonight, as you rest here, you might let yourself wonder, very gently, where your own eyes were made. What old city shaped the way you see? What ancient caution still moves through your body when kindness comes close? You do not need to answer. You do not need to figure anything out. Just let the question be there, like a soft bell ringing in a quiet room. Let it hum. There is a lovely image in the Buddhist tradition of a lotus flower. The lotus grows in muddy water. Its roots are deep in the dark silt at the bottom of a pond. And yet the flower that opens at the surface is perfectly clean. It is not stained by where it came from. It does not carry the mud with it. It simply rises through it and blooms. Your fears, your habits of protection, your old alertness, these are the mud. They are not who you are. They are where you grew. And something in you, the part that is listening right now, the part that recognized the young traveler's ache as something familiar, that part is the flower, already rising, already clean, already turning toward the light. And know that wherever your eyes were made, whatever you learned to carry, it does not have to be the end of the story. It is simply where the story has been. And now, Here you are, listening, resting, breathing. Something in you is beginning to see the lens. Something is beginning to soften. That is enough for now. That is more than enough. Let us pause here for a breath. Notice what is present in you right now. And whenever you feel ready, we will continue together. Right now, as you listen to these words, your body is doing something you probably have not noticed. Your shoulders may be pulled up just slightly, a little closer to your ears than they need to be. Your jaw may be set, just a touch, as if you are gently biting down on something invisible. There may be a small knot in your belly, a quiet tightness that has been there so long it feels like furniture. Part of the room, something you step around without seeing. And your hands, wherever they are resting, may be holding on a little more firmly than the moment requires. You might check, just gently, not with judgment, just with the soft curiosity of someone noticing, for the first time, that it has been raining. This is one of the quietest discoveries on the path of letting go. We carry so much tension that we do not know we are carrying. The body clenches and we do not feel it. Not because the clenching is hidden, but because it has been there so long that we have stopped noticing it. It is like a sound you have been hearing for years, the hum of a refrigerator, the distant rumble of a road. At some point it disappeared into the background. It became the silence itself. And yet, it is not silence. It is effort. Constant, invisible effort. The body spending energy to hold itself tight, day after day, night after night, even in sleep. We wake in the morning already tense, and we think this is just what mornings feel like. We carry our shoulders like shelves all day, and think this is just what shoulders do. We breathe in small, careful sips, and think this is just what breathing is. But it is not. Underneath all that holding, the body remembers a different way of being. The way a baby breathes, deep and full, the whole belly rising and falling like a wave. The way a cat sleeps, completely surrendered, every muscle soft, trusting the ground to hold it. We were born knowing how to rest. Somewhere along the way, we forgot. Not because we are broken, but because we learned that the world required vigilance, and vigilance requires tension, and tension became home. Tonight, we are going to explore what happens when we simply notice. There is a very old teaching, sometimes told as a riddle, that goes like this. A student came to a wise teacher and said, "I have been meditating for many years, but I still feel tense and heavy. I feel like I am carrying something, but I do not know what it is. How do I put it down?" The teacher said, "Show me how you are carrying it." The student looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Show me. Right now. What are you doing with your body?" The student paused. He noticed his shoulders were lifted. His brow was furrowed. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, knuckles white, fingers wrapped around each other as if they were holding on to something precious. "There," the teacher said gently. "You are making fists. Did you know?" The student looked down at his own hands. He had not known. "Now," the teacher said, "stop making the fists." And in that moment, the student felt something release. Not because he did anything new, but because he stopped doing something old. He simply ceased the clenching, and his hands, of their own accord, softened and opened, the way a sleeping child's hands open, naturally, without instruction. That, the teacher said, is what letting go feels like. You did not push anything away. You did not force anything to change. You simply noticed what you were doing, and in the noticing, the doing stopped. This teaching is so simple that it is easy to miss, but it may be one of the most important things we ever learn. Letting go is not an action. It is the end of an action. It is not something we add. It is something we stop. Like unclenching a fist. Like releasing a held breath. Like stepping out of a river and realizing only then how hard we had been working to stand against the current. The Buddha had a way of speaking about this that was very gentle and very clear. He said that we are all like someone standing in the rain, holding an umbrella that is turned upside down. The rain fills the umbrella, and it gets heavier and heavier, and we complain about the weight, and we wonder why life is so hard. But the solution is not to carry the umbrella more skillfully. The solution is to turn it over, or perhaps to set it down altogether. Much of our tension is like that upside-down umbrella. We are doing something, actively, all the time, that creates the heaviness. We are clenching muscles we do not need to clench. We are bracing for things that are not happening yet. We are holding our breath in the middle of a perfectly safe room. And we do not realize we are doing it, because the doing has become so habitual that it feels like being. Let us explore what this looks like in an ordinary day. There is a story about a person who was on their way to an important meeting. They had planned the journey carefully, leaving extra time, feeling organized and calm. The car was quiet. The afternoon sun was warm through the window. There was even a little feeling of satisfaction, the feeling of a day going according to plan. But the road had other ideas. Traffic had stopped completely. Not the slow crawl that sometimes passes for traffic, but a full, absolute stillness. The kind where you can watch a bird land on the road ahead and walk between the cars as if the road belonged to it. A long ribbon of vehicles stretched forward as far as the eye could see. Brake lights glowed red in the afternoon haze, hundreds of them, like a string of dull lanterns going nowhere. At first, it was fine. A mild annoyance. A small adjustment to the plan. The person turned off the radio and sat quietly. They checked the clock. There was still time. Not a lot, but enough. But then the minutes began to pass. 5 minutes. 10. 15. The clock moved, but the cars did not. And the meeting time crept closer, and the calm began to drain away, like water through sand. You could almost feel the moment it shifted. The moment the body stopped being patient and started being something else. This person started to lean forward in their seat. Not consciously. The body just did it, as if leaning forward might push the cars ahead. Their hands tightened on the steering wheel, gripping it the way you might grip the armrest during turbulence. Their jaw set. Their breathing became shallow and quick, little sips of air instead of full breaths. Their shoulders crept up toward their ears, slowly, invisibly, like a tide rising. And a band of tension wrapped itself around the back of their skull, a dull pressure that was not quite a headache, but was heading in that direction. Inside, a familiar voice started up. The voice of worry. This is going to be terrible. I am going to be late. They will think I do not care. I should have left earlier. Why did I not leave earlier? The thoughts had a kind of momentum to them, each one building on the last, each one a little more urgent, a little more certain that everything was about to go wrong. And then, in the middle of all this, a small, quiet thought arrived. It did not shout. It did not argue with the other thoughts. It simply appeared, like a single, clear note in the middle of noise. You are clenching. That was all. Just a noticing. Not a judgment. Not a solution. Just, oh, you are clenching right now. And with that one small noticing, something shifted. The person did not try to relax. They did not tell themselves to calm down. They did not take 3 deep breaths or repeat a positive phrase or do anything at all that they had read in a book. They simply became aware of what the body was doing. They noticed the grip on the steering wheel and softened it, just slightly. Not forcing the hands open, just letting them remember that the wheel did not need to be held like a lifeline. They noticed the shoulders and let them drop, just half an inch. Like setting down 2 small bags of sand. They noticed the jaw and let it loosen. The teeth parted, just barely, and a small breath moved through the space between them. They noticed the belly, knotted and hard, and just let their attention rest there, the way you might rest a warm hand on a place that aches. Not pushing, not pulling, just presence. And the body, which had been running a program of tension for 20 minutes without anyone watching, began to unwind. Not all at once, not dramatically, but like a spring that has been coiled tight and is finally, gradually, allowed to extend. The traffic did not move. The meeting time still approached. Nothing about the outside world had changed at all. But inside, something had opened. A small clearing. A little room where there had been none. This is the teaching at its most practical and its most profound. The body does not need to be forced into peace. It only needs to be noticed. And in the noticing, a natural intelligence takes over, an intelligence that is older and wiser than our anxious thinking minds. There is a phrase that appears often in Buddhist practice. Letting go is letting be. These are almost the same words. Letting go, letting be. But the difference is everything. Letting go sounds like an action. It sounds like something we must do, something we must achieve. And when we cannot achieve it, we feel like failures. But letting be is different. Letting be is simply allowing what is already here to be here. Not adding anything, not subtracting anything, just meeting the moment exactly as it is. When the person in the car noticed their tension, they did not let go of it. They let it be. They allowed themselves to feel it fully, and in that allowing, the tension began to dissolve on its own. The fist they did not know they were making began to open. A Zen saying captures this beautifully. Spring does not arrive because you pull the flowers from the ground. Spring arrives because you let the season turn. We cannot force ourselves to relax. We cannot bully ourselves into peace. But we can notice. And noticing, it turns out, is the most powerful thing in the world. There is a small story about this, told in many different ways across the Buddhist tradition. A traveler came to a river. The current was strong, pulling leaves and branches along its surface. The traveler needed to cross, so he waded in and immediately began fighting the water. He pushed against the current. He strained his legs. He gripped rocks on the riverbed with his toes and fought for every step. By the time he reached the other side, he was exhausted. His body ached. He collapsed on the bank, breathing hard. A little while later, another traveler arrived at the same river. She looked at the water for a long moment. Then she waded in, and instead of fighting the current, she leaned into it. She let it carry her diagonally, stepping where the current wanted to go, moving with the water rather than against it. She arrived downstream from where the first traveler had crossed, but she arrived easily. Her breathing was calm. She had barely broken a sweat. The first traveler, watching from the bank, called out, "How did you do that?" "I nearly spent all my energy trying to cross." The woman smiled and said, "I stopped fighting the river. The river was never my enemy. It was just a river." So much of our inner life is like this. We fight the current of what is happening. We push against our own feelings, our own bodies, our own wandering minds. And the fighting is what exhausts us, not the river itself. The river is just the river. It is the resistance that wears us down. Letting be means stepping into the current and allowing it to carry you. Not giving up, not going limp, but finding the way that moves with life rather than against it. There is a reason this works, and it is worth understanding because it is such a comforting thing to know. When we are not paying attention, when awareness is elsewhere, the body defaults to its oldest habits. It clenches in the same places over and over. The shoulders rise. The belly tightens. The breath gets small. These are ancient patterns learned long ago, and they run automatically, like a song playing in an empty room. Nobody chose to play it. Nobody is listening. It just plays on and on because no one has walked in and noticed. But the moment awareness arrives, something changes. It is as if someone has walked into that room and the song becomes conscious of itself. The pattern, which had been running blindly, is suddenly seen. And in being seen, it is freed. Not forced to change. Freed to change. Given permission, at last, to do something different. This is one of the most beautiful discoveries in the whole of Buddhist teaching. That awareness itself is healing. Not awareness as effort. Not awareness as concentration or straining to pay attention. But awareness as simple, open, gentle presence. The kind of awareness that does not want anything from you. The kind that just says, "I am here. I see you. You are okay." Think of how it feels when someone truly listens to you. Not trying to fix you. Not waiting for their turn to speak. Just listening. There is something that softens in you, is there not? Something that unclenches. You do not have to perform. You do not have to hold yourself together. You can just be. That is what awareness does for the body. It listens. And the body, which has been talking to an empty room for years, finally feels heard. And in feeling heard, it can let go. This is why mindfulness is not about concentration or discipline or willpower. It is about something much gentler and much more natural. It is about showing up. It is about being present to what is already happening in this body, in this breath, in this moment. The great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who spent his long life teaching the art of mindful presence, used to say, "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." He did not say, "I fight the clouds." He did not say, "I make the clouds disappear." He said, I anchor myself, and I let the sky be what it is. He also said something even simpler, something that you might carry with you long after tonight. He said, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. That is the whole practice, right there. One breath of noticing, one breath of gentleness, and the body remembers what it always knew. This is what we are learning, not to change the weather, just to find our anchor, not to stop the waves, just to rest in the deep water beneath them, where it has always been still. Let us try something together, right now. It is very simple. You do not need to do anything except notice. Wherever you are, whatever position your body is in, just let your attention drift to your hands. You do not need to move them. Just feel them. Feel whatever they are touching. Feel the temperature of the air around them. Feel the weight of them resting wherever they rest. Now, without trying to change anything, notice if there is any holding in them, any subtle grip, any tension in the fingers, the palms, the wrists. You might be surprised, or you might not. Either is fine. There is no right answer here. Only noticing. And now, just by noticing, just by being aware, see if the hands soften. Even a little. You are not doing the softening. You are allowing the softening. The body already knows how to open. It has been waiting for your attention, the way a garden waits for rain. Now, if you like, let that same gentle attention drift upward, through the wrists, the forearms, the elbows, not searching for anything, not fixing anything, just visiting the way sunlight visits each part of a room as the day moves on. Let it reach your shoulders. Just notice them. And if they want to drop, even slightly, let them. Like two birds settling onto a branch. Let your attention visit your face, the muscles around the eyes, the forehead, the jaw, all those tiny muscles that work so hard all day, expressing, holding, guarding. Just let your awareness touch them gently and see what wants to soften. This is the whole teaching, right here, in your own body. Awareness arrives, and the fist that no one knew they were making begins, gently, to let go. The Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And perhaps what he meant, at least in part, is this. The peace is not somewhere else. It is not something we have to go and find or earn or build. It is what is already here, underneath the clenching. It is what remains when the effort stops. Like the stillness at the bottom of a lake, always there, even when the surface is covered in waves. Like the silence between two notes of music, which was there all along, waiting to be heard. You do not need to create peace. You only need to stop disturbing it. And the way you stop disturbing it is the simplest thing in the world. You notice, you let be. And the body, which has been holding on for so long, finally remembers that it is safe to rest. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the body be just as it is. And whenever you are ready, we will continue together. There is a small parable about a fish who swam up to an older, wiser fish one morning and said, "Excuse me, I have been searching everywhere. Can you tell me where to find this thing they call the ocean?" The older fish smiled gently and said, "My dear, you are in it. This story points to something that is both very funny and very profound. Sometimes the thing we are looking for is so close, so completely surrounding us, that we cannot see it. We are swimming in it. We are made of it. And still we search, because it has never occurred to us that what we seek might already be here. Tonight, we are going to talk about a kind of invisible line that runs through every moment of our lives. It is not a line anyone can see or touch, but it changes everything about how we experience being alive. And the beautiful thing is, once you know about it, you can never quite unknow it. Let us begin with a simple picture. Imagine a wide, open field. It stretches out in all directions, with tall grass and wildflowers, and a sky so big it makes you feel quiet just looking at it. Across this field runs a single line, like a horizon, dividing two different worlds. Below the line, life is happening. Thoughts are spinning. Emotions are surging. The body is reacting, clenching, reaching, pulling away. Everything is in motion. But here is the important thing. Below the line, no one is watching. There is no witness. It is like a dream you do not know you are dreaming. You are completely inside the experience, and because you are completely inside it, it feels like the whole of reality. There is no space between you and what is happening. You are the worry. You are the craving. You are the irritation. There is no distance, no air, no room to move. Above the line, something remarkable happens. The same things may be occurring. The same thoughts, the same feelings, the same sensations in the body. But now there is awareness. Someone is home. There is a part of you that is watching, gently, the way you might watch clouds from a hilltop. And that watching changes everything. Not because it makes the difficult things disappear, but because it gives you room. It gives you a choice you did not have a moment ago. The choice to respond rather than simply react. Below the line, we react. Above the line, we respond. And the difference between those two things is the difference between being carried away by a river and sitting on the bank, watching the water flow. Let us explore what living below the line looks and feels like, because all of us know it well, even if we have never had a name for it. It looks like scrolling through your thoughts at midnight, caught in a story about something that has not happened yet and probably never will, but feeling your pulse race as if it is happening right now. It feels like that moment when someone says something small and careless, and before you have even finished hearing it, something in you has already composed a sharp reply, already built a case, already convicted them, and is working on the sentence. Below the line, we are fast. We are reactive. We are certain. And we are almost always wrong about what the moment actually requires. There is a story about an old potter who lived in a small village at the foot of some gentle green hills. He was known throughout the village for his beautiful work, his steady hands, and his calm disposition. People came from neighboring towns to buy his bowls and cups, and he took great pride in his craft. One morning, the potter was carrying a tray of his finest pieces to the market. He had been working on them for weeks. Each one was glazed with care, each one balanced just so. He walked slowly, watching his step on the dusty road. Then a dog ran across his path. A silly, happy dog, chasing nothing in particular. The potter startled. His foot caught a stone, and the tray tipped. Every single piece shattered on the ground. Now, what happened next is the interesting part. The potter stood there, looking at the broken pieces, and something took over. Not the wise, calm man the village knew. Something older, something faster. A wave of heat rose from his belly to his chest to his throat. His hands clenched. His thoughts raced. That stupid dog. That careless owner. My work. My weeks of work. Ruined. Everything is ruined. He shouted at the dog, which was already long gone. He cursed the stone in the road. He kicked at the broken shards, which only cut his sandal. And by the time he finally stopped, breathing hard, hands shaking, he realized he had been standing there for 10 minutes, lost in a storm that had nothing left to blow against. The dog did not hear him. The stone did not care. And the pots were still broken. This is what it looks like below the line. It is not that the potter was a bad person or a foolish one. He was simply caught. Something happened, and before he could think, before he could choose, the old, fast, reactive part of him took over. The part that does not pause. The part that does not reflect. The part that moves from feeling to action with no space in between. Every one of us has this part. It is ancient. It is the part of us that evolved to react quickly in moments of danger, to fight or flee without stopping to consider. And it served us well for a very long time. When life was truly dangerous, when every moment required quick action, this part of us kept us alive. But here is where it gets tricky. This ancient, reactive part does not know the difference between a real threat and a broken pot. It does not know the difference between a tiger in the path and a slow line at the market, between a genuine emergency and an email that makes us anxious. It simply reacts. The same way, with the same intensity, every time, because that is all it knows how to do. And when we are living from this place, from below the line, we cannot let go. Not because we are weak, not because we are doing something wrong, but because the part of us that could let go, the aware, spacious, choosing part, is simply not online. It is like trying to steer a boat when you are underwater. You cannot reach the wheel. Now, here is where this becomes something hopeful rather than discouraging. The potter, as it happens, had a friend. An old woman who lived at the edge of the village and was known for her quietness and her good sense. She had been watching from her doorstep as the whole thing unfolded. After the potter had spent himself, after the shouting and the kicking and the heavy breathing, he looked up and saw her sitting there. She had a cup of tea in her hands and a look on her face that was not quite a smile, but close to it. "Rough morning," she said. The potter sighed. He sat down on the ground next to the broken pottery and put his head in his hands. "I lost my temper again," he said. "I always lose my temper. I hate that about myself." The old woman took a sip of tea. "When did you notice?" she asked. "Notice what?" "That you had lost your temper." The potter thought about it. "Just now, I suppose. When I stopped shouting." "And when you noticed," she said, "what happened?" He paused. "I stopped." "Yes," she said. "You stopped. That is the thing people miss. You were lost, and then you were not lost. You were below the water, and then you came up for air. The fact that you went under is not the interesting part. Everyone goes under. The interesting part is that you came back up." She poured him a cup of tea from her own pot and handed it to him. It was warm in his hands. "You know," she said, "the river does not apologize for flowing. The wind does not apologize for blowing. And you do not need to apologize for being human." Anger came. It does that. It is what happened after the anger that matters. You woke up. That is the whole path, right there in your morning. The potter looked down at the broken pieces around him. They look different now. Not like a catastrophe, more like just a thing that happened. Shards of clay on a dusty road. Nothing more, nothing less. "Can I make new ones?" he said, half to himself. "You always do," the old woman said. There is a teaching in the Buddhist tradition that says the mind is like a sky. Storms come, clouds gather, lightning may flash, but the sky itself is never damaged by any of it. It does not need to be repaired. It does not need to be cleaned. It simply waits, and the storm passes, and the sky is as it always was, wide and open and clear. When we go below the line, we are inside the storm. When we come above it, we remember that we are also the sky. She set down her tea and looked at him kindly. The question is not how to stop going under. The question is how to come back up a little sooner each time. This is one of the wisest things we can understand about this whole journey. The goal is not to never react. The goal is not to live permanently above the line in some state of perfect, unshakable calm. That is not realistic, and honestly, it is not even very human. We are creatures who feel deeply. We are built to respond to life with our whole being. The goal is simply to notice, to catch ourselves a little sooner, to come up for air a little faster. And each time we do, each time we move from below the line to above it, something wonderful happens. We get a little more familiar with that spacious, watching place. It becomes less foreign, more like home. A great Zen teacher once said, "Enlightenment is not about never falling down. It is about getting up each time and eventually learning to fall with grace." And there is something deeply restful in that, is there not? The pressure is off. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to master anything. You just have to notice. And every time you notice, you are already above the line. Even if you were below it a moment ago. Even if you will be below it again a moment from now. In this breath, you noticed. And that is enough. There is a wonderful story about a student who went to a meditation teacher and said, "I am a terrible meditator. My mind wanders constantly. I get lost in thoughts 100 times in a single sitting." The teacher said, "How wonderful." The student blinked. "Wonderful? Did you not hear what I said? 100 times I get lost." "Yes," the teacher said. "And 100 times you came back. That is 100 moments of waking up. Most people go a whole day without waking up once. You did it 100 times before breakfast. This is such a kind way to see it. Every time we notice we are below the line, that noticing is itself the return. We do not have to climb some great mountain. We just have to open our eyes. And the opening of the eyes is the arrival. Let us explore one more story here, because it shows what it looks like when someone begins to live a little more above the line, and how that changes not just their inner world but everything around them. There is a story about a man who had a habit of impatience. He was not unkind. In fact, most people who knew him thought of him as a good person. But he moved through his days like someone trying to catch a train that was always about to leave. Everything was urgent. Everything needed to happen faster. And when the world did not cooperate with his schedule, something in him would tighten and snap, like a rubber band pulled too far. He had been learning, in his own quiet way, to pay more attention. Not through any grand spiritual program, just a simple intention to notice when he was getting caught up, to pause even for a heartbeat before reacting. One evening, after a very long day, he stopped at a market to pick up a few things for dinner. The store was busy. He had a full basket. He was tired, and all he wanted was to get home. He joined a line, and in front of him was a woman with a small child. The woman had only 1 or 2 things to buy, but instead of placing them on the counter, she lifted the little girl up and showed her to the person behind the counter. And the two of them, the woman and the clerk, began to make a fuss over this child, smiling and laughing and saying how much she had grown. The man felt it building, the familiar tightening, the thoughts lining up like soldiers. She should be in the quick line. She only has 1 item, and now they are chatting. Do they not see the line behind them? I have things to do. I have had a long day. This is not fair. He could feel the heat in his chest. The old pattern revving up, ready to honk its horn. And then, very quietly, he noticed. Oh, he thought. There it is. He did not try to push the feeling away. He did not scold himself for being impatient. He just saw it. The tightness, the urgency, the feeling that the world was failing to cooperate with his very important plans. And in seeing it, something softened. Just a little. Just enough. He took a breath. He looked up from his own thoughts, and for the first time, he actually saw the little girl. She was maybe 2 years old, with round cheeks and dark, curious eyes, and she was reaching up to touch the face of the person behind the counter with a tiny, gentle hand. Something in his chest loosened. Not all the way, but enough to let a different feeling in. Something warm. Something that had been there all along, underneath the rush, waiting for a little room. When it was finally his turn, and the woman and the child had moved on, he said, "That was a beautiful little girl." And the clerk, whose eyes had been bright and happy, looked at him and said something that changed the rest of his evening. She said, "That is my daughter. Her grandmother brings her to visit me here twice a day. My husband is away, serving overseas, and this is the only time I get to hold her until I get home late at night." The man stood there with his basket of groceries and felt the world get very quiet and very wide. The fluorescent lights of the market, the beeping of the scanners, the chatter of voices, it all seemed to soften and recede, and for a moment, there was just this. A clerk who missed her husband. A grandmother who brought a child to a market twice a day, so a young mother could hold her daughter. A tiny hand reaching up to touch a familiar face. All of this had been happening right in front of him, and he had almost missed it entirely. He had almost stood there simmering in his own impatience while the most tender thing in the world unfolded 3 feet away. He did not say anything wise. He did not have a revelation with trumpets and light. He simply felt something open in him that the impatience had been keeping shut. A kind of tenderness, a recognition that everyone around him was carrying something, that every person in every line, in every market, on every road, had a story he could not see, a weight he could not measure, a love he knew nothing about. And that recognition, that simple, gentle opening, only happened because for one moment he came above the line. He noticed the tightness instead of being swallowed by it. And in that small gap, that tiny pause, the whole world flooded in. He carried his groceries home that evening, and the bag felt lighter than it should have. The air was cool and the sky was turning the color of peaches above the rooftops. And he thought, not for the first time, but perhaps for the first time with real feeling, that he had been rushing through his life like someone late for a train, and the train was not going anywhere he actually needed to be. The Buddha once said, "In the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you." Living above the line is how we learn to do all three. It is how we love more fully, because we can see the people around us instead of being trapped inside our own reactions. It is how we live more gently, because we are no longer at war with every moment that does not go our way. And it is how we let go, not through force, but through the simple, quiet power of being awake. You do not have to climb there. You do not have to earn it. You simply notice, and in the noticing, you are already there. Let us pause here gently. Feel whatever you are feeling, and when you are ready, we will continue together. On a clear night, far from the lights of any city, you can look up and see the whole sky. Stars beyond counting. The dark velvet of space stretching out in every direction. It is so vast that it can make you feel very small, and strangely, that smallness does not feel frightening. It feels like relief. Here is something curious about that sky. It is always there. On cloudy nights, on rainy days, on afternoons so grey and heavy that you forget the sun exists, the sky is still there, unchanged, behind it all. The clouds are visitors. The storms are visitors. They come and they go, and the sky does not mind. It does not chase them. It does not cling to them. It simply holds them for as long as they last, and when they leave, it remains. Your mind is like that sky. This may be one of the most comforting things anyone will ever tell you, and tonight, we are going to sit with it for a while. Because most of us have been living as if we are the clouds, as if our thoughts are who we are, as if the weather in our minds is the final truth about us. And it is not. It never was. We think a worried thought, and we become the worry. We think an angry thought, and we become the anger. We think a thought that says, "I am not enough," and we become that smallness, that lack, that quiet despair. The thought fills the whole sky of our awareness, and we forget that the sky was there before the thought arrived and will be there long after it has drifted away. But here is the beautiful part. You do not have to stop the clouds to find the sky. You do not have to fight them or chase them or figure out where they came from. You simply have to remember that the sky is there. And the moment you remember, even for an instant, something shifts. You are no longer trapped inside the weather. You are the vastness that holds it. Let us explore a story about how a person comes to understand this. There was once a scholar who lived in a mountain town. She was a great reader, a great thinker, a collector of ideas and arguments and opinions. Her mind was always busy. It sorted and analyzed and categorized the world from morning until night, and even in her dreams it continued its work, turning over problems, examining them from every angle, looking for the answer to something she could not quite name. She was, by any measure, a brilliant person, but she was not a peaceful one. One year, she heard about an old teacher who lived simply in a small hermitage further up the mountain. People said he was wise. People said he was quiet. People said that being near him felt like sitting beside a still lake. The scholar decided to visit. She packed a bag full of books and notebooks and climbed the trail to his hermitage. The path wound through cedar trees, and the air grew cooler and quieter as she climbed. Birds called to each other in voices that seemed to have all the time in the world. When she arrived, she found a small stone building with a wooden door that had been painted blue a long time ago and had since faded to the color of a winter sky. A garden grew beside it where beans and squash climbed their poles in patient rows, and somewhere behind the building, a stream made the sound that streams make when no one is in a hurry. The old teacher was sitting outside on a flat rock, doing what appeared to be nothing at all. His eyes were open but soft, as if he were looking at everything and nothing at the same time. "I have come to learn," the scholar said. The teacher nodded. "Sit down," he said. She sat. The rock was warm from the sun. "What troubles you?" he asked. "My mind," she said. "It never stops. I think and think and think, and I cannot find peace. I have read 100 books on how to find peace, and each one gives me more to think about, which makes it worse. I have read the sutras. I have studied the old teachers. I have memorized their words, and still my mind churns like a river after rain. I have come to you because people say you know how to quiet the mind." The old teacher smiled. It was a kind smile, not mocking at all. "I do not know how to quiet the mind," he said. "The mind does what it does. That is its nature. Asking the mind to be quiet is like asking the wind to stop blowing. It will stop when it stops, and then it will start again." The scholar frowned. She had not climbed all this way for that. "Then what do you teach?" "I teach people to sit outside." She waited for more. He seemed perfectly content to let the silence be his second sentence. A bird landed on a branch nearby and considered them both. After a while, she said, "I do not understand." "When you are inside a house," the teacher said, "and a storm comes, what is that like?" "Frightening," she said. "The noise, the shaking. It feels like the walls might not hold. It feels like the whole world is falling apart." "Yes. And when you are outside, on a hilltop, watching the same storm pass through the valley below." The scholar paused. She could almost see it. The dark clouds rolling through the valley, the flickers of lightning, the distant rumble. And herself, sitting on the hilltop, the wind in her hair, watching it all from a place that the storm could not reach. "It is different," she said slowly. "It is still powerful, but there is distance. You can see it for what it is. Just a storm, passing through." "Yes," the teacher said. "Your thoughts are the storm, and you have been living inside the house. I am simply inviting you to come outside." They sat together for a long time after that. She did not read any of the books she had brought. She did not take any notes. She just sat on the warm rock and watched the sky change color as the afternoon aged, and for the first time she could remember, her mind did not feel like an enemy. It felt like weather. It felt like something she could watch. This is one of the great discoveries that people come to, sometimes after years of practice, and sometimes in a single quiet moment. The discovery that thoughts are not facts. They are events. They arise, they exist for a little while, and they pass. Like weather, like clouds, like the sound of a bell that rings and then fades into silence. We do not have to believe them. This sounds like such a simple thing to say. But for most of us, it is revolutionary. Because we have spent our entire lives treating our thoughts as though they were absolute truth. The thought says, "You are not good enough," and we believe it, the way we believe gravity. The thought says, "Something terrible is going to happen," and we feel the terror in our bodies as if the terrible thing were already here. The thought says, "You need to fix this right now, or everything will fall apart," and we rush into action, driven by a voice that has no more authority than the wind. The Buddha put this very simply. He said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." And he did not mean this as a celebration. He meant it as a diagnosis. We are living inside a world that our thoughts have built, and most of the time, we do not realize we are the builders. What would it be like to step outside the house, to watch the storm from the hilltop, to see a thought arise and, instead of climbing inside it and letting it carry you away, simply to notice it and let it pass? There is a beautiful old teaching about this that has been passed around for centuries. A forest monk was asked by a visitor, "What do you do here all day? What is your practice?" The monk said, "I sit. Thoughts come. I let them go. Thoughts come. I let them go. That is all?" The visitor said, "That is your whole practice. What more would you have me do?" The monk said, "Build them a house and invite them to stay?" There is such gentle humor in this, and such wisdom, because this is exactly what we do, is it not? A thought arrives, a worry, a plan, a memory, a judgment, and instead of letting it drift through like a cloud, we build it a house. We furnish the house. We give the thought a comfortable chair and a cup of tea, and we sit with it for hours, talking it over, decorating the rooms, adding a second floor. We give it a name and a history and a future, and before we know it, we have constructed an entire mansion out of a single passing thought. By the time we are done, we are living with this thought. It has become our roommate, our companion, sometimes our jailer, and we wonder why we feel so crowded inside. We wonder why there is no room to breathe. But it is not that the house is too small. It is that we have filled it with guests who were only ever passing through. Another great teacher, a monk who spent many years in the forests of Southeast Asia, once described his entire approach in just 2 words: letting go. He said you could simplify the whole spiritual path down to this. Whenever a thought arises that pulls you into its story, just let it go. Whenever a desire builds that wants to carry you somewhere, let it go. Whenever an opinion forms that wants to harden into certainty, let it go. He said that he practiced nothing else for about 2 years. Just those 2 words. Every time the mind reached out to grab something, to figure something out, to worry something into shape, he would simply whisper, "Let go." And after a while, the reaching would fade, and there would be a moment of openness, of space, of quiet. And then the mind would reach again, and he would whisper again, and so it went. Let go. Let go. Let go. He was not saying that thoughts are bad. He was not saying that thinking is the enemy. Thinking is a beautiful gift. It builds bridges and writes songs and solves problems and imagines futures. But he was simply pointing out that we have a choice we did not know we had. The thought arises, and we can follow it, or we can let it pass. We can live inside the cloud, or we can watch it drift across the sky. And every time we let a thought go, even once, something opens up. A little patch of blue appears where there was only grey a moment ago. And we remember, oh yes, I am not the weather. I am the sky. There is one more thing about this that is worth knowing, because it can save us a great deal of unnecessary suffering. Our thoughts are storytellers. They are very good at their job. They tell vivid, detailed, convincing stories about what has happened, what is happening, and what is about to happen. And these stories feel so real that we mistake them for reality. But they are not reality. They are interpretations. They are guesses. They are the mind's attempt to make sense of something that is, in truth, much simpler and much more mysterious than any story can capture. Let us explore a small story to see this in action. A man was walking through a forest on a dark evening. The trees were tall and close together, and only scraps of moonlight reached the path. The air smelled of damp leaves and earth. He had been walking for some time, and his feet were tired, and he was looking forward to reaching his home at the other end of the woods. Then, ahead of him on the path, he saw a shape. Long, curved, motionless. Something about it made his body go cold before his mind could say why. And then the mind caught up. A snake, coiled and still, right in the center of the path. His heart began to pound. His breath caught in his throat like a stone. Every muscle in his body locked, screaming at him to turn and run. But he could not move. Fear had frozen him where he stood. He stood there for what felt like a very long time, staring at the shape, his whole being vibrating with alarm. He could feel his pulse in his fingertips. He could hear his own breathing, ragged and shallow. The forest around him, which had been friendly a moment ago, now seemed full of threat. And then a cloud moved, and the moon came out, full and bright, and the pale silver light fell on the path like a gift. And he saw that the shape was not a snake at all. It was a coiled rope that someone had left on the trail. Just a rope. A simple, harmless rope. In an instant, everything changed. The fear drained out of him like water from a cup. His body softened. His hands unclenched. His breath came back in a long, easy wave. He even laughed, a little shakily, at himself, at the whole thing. Nothing on the path had changed. The rope was the same rope it had always been. It had been a rope the whole time he was afraid. The only thing that changed was his thought about it. One moment he thought, snake, and his whole world was fear. The next moment he thought, rope, and his whole world was relief. This is what our thoughts do to us, all day long. They say snake and we suffer. They say rope and we relax. And most of the time we never check. We never wait for the moonlight. We just believe the first story and live inside it, and call it reality. The Buddhist tradition has a word for this. It is sometimes translated as delusion or confusion. But a gentler way to understand it is simply this. We are mistaking our thoughts for the truth. We are confusing the map with the territory. And the map, no matter how detailed, is never the land itself. Think of how many times in your life you have been afraid of something that turned out to be a rope. How many sleepless nights were spent worrying about a conversation that went fine. How many days were shadowed by a fear that never came true. How many arguments were built on a misunderstanding that, once cleared, dissolved like mist in morning light. We do not do this because we are foolish. We do this because we are human. The mind is a storyteller, and storytellers tell stories. That is what they do. The stories are often vivid and detailed and utterly convincing, and we have been listening to them our whole lives without ever thinking to ask, is this one true? Or is this just another story? This is not a failing. It is simply a habit. A very old, very human habit. And like all habits, it can be seen. And in the seeing, it begins to loosen. The moonlight comes through, and the snake, which was never really there, returns to being what it always was. So tonight, as you rest, you might notice your thoughts drifting in and out. Planning, remembering, worrying, imagining. This is not a problem. This is just the mind doing what minds do. It is the wind blowing. It is the clouds forming and dissolving and forming again. You do not have to follow them. You do not have to fight them. You can simply let them pass, the way you would let a leaf float by on a stream. You see it. You notice it. And then it is gone, and you are still here. Still the water. Still the sky. Still the awareness that holds everything and is held by nothing. The Buddha once said, nothing is permanent. Everything is subject to change. Be a light unto yourself. And perhaps this is part of what he meant. Do not anchor yourself to your thoughts, because thoughts change like the wind. Anchor yourself instead to the awareness that watches the thoughts come and go. That awareness does not change. It does not age. It does not worry. It simply is. And in that simple is, there is more peace than all the thoughts in the world could ever offer. There is a Zen poem that goes like this, though I will share it gently and in my own way. It says, on a clear night, sitting quietly, the moon reflected in a still pond. But even when clouds cover the moon is still shining. And even when the wind disturbs the pond, the water is still water. You are the moon. You are the water. The clouds and the wind are just passing through. They always have been. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the thoughts come and go as they will. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a story, a very old one, about a prisoner. He had been locked in a cell for what felt like a very long time. The cell was small and dim, with stone walls that held the cold in their bones, even in summer. A thin window high up let in a single bar of light that moved across the floor as the hours passed, and that bar of light was the only clock he had. He wanted nothing more than to be free. He could hear birds outside. He could smell bread baking somewhere beyond the walls. He could feel, in his chest, the ache of a life he was not living. Every day, he threw himself against the door. He kicked it. He pounded on it with his fists until his knuckles were raw. He rammed it with his shoulder until his whole side was bruised and burning. He tried running at it. He tried wedging things under it. He tried everything he could think of, and the door held fast. Every evening, He collapsed on the stone floor, exhausted and defeated, staring at the ceiling, listening to the birds he could not reach. And every morning he woke up and tried again. Because what else could he do? The door was all he had. This went on for years. Then one day, a child wandered into the corridor outside his cell. She was small and barefoot and had a daisy tucked behind one ear, and she seemed to have no particular reason for being there. She looked at the man through the bars with clear, curious eyes and said, "Why do you not just come out?" "The door is locked," the man said bitterly. "I have been trying to open it for years." The child tilted her head, the way children do when they are genuinely puzzled by something that adults have made complicated. She walked over to the door and placed her small hand on it, and she pushed. Not hard, barely at all. The way you might push open a garden gate. And the door swung open, inward. It had never been locked. It opened inward, easily, silently. And all those years, he had been pushing it the wrong way. This story has stayed with me because it points to something so simple and so easy to overlook. Sometimes the very thing that is keeping us stuck is not the problem we think it is. It is our approach to the problem, our angle, our attitude. We push and push and push, exhausting ourselves, never thinking to try the other direction. And when it comes to our habits, our patterns, the things we wish we could let go of, this may be the most important thing we ever learn. The door opens inward, and pushing harder will never work. What does it mean for the door to open inward? It means this. For most of our lives, when we encounter a habit we do not like, we approach it as something to be conquered. We declare war on it. We arm ourselves with willpower and discipline and determination, and we march into battle. We say, "I will not do this anymore. I will stop. I will be stronger than this." And sometimes, for a little while, it works. We white-knuckle our way through a day, a week, a month. We feel proud. We feel strong. We feel like we are winning. But the habit has not gone anywhere. It is waiting, patiently, just behind the door. It has not changed. It has not healed. It has simply been held at bay by force, the way you might hold a door shut with your body while something presses from the other side. And the moment our willpower runs thin, as it always does, because willpower is not an endless well, but more like a battery that drains with use, the habit floods back in, and we feel worse than before. Because now we have not only the habit, but the failure of having tried to conquer it and fallen short. And that failure feeds something even heavier than the habit itself. It feeds the belief that we are weak, that something is wrong with us, that everyone else seems to manage just fine and we are the only ones who cannot. This is such a painful cycle, and it is so common. Nearly everyone who has ever struggled with a habit knows this loop. Try, fail, blame yourself. Try harder, fail again, blame yourself more. Each lap around the track leaves you more tired and more convinced that you are the problem. The Buddha saw this very clearly, thousands of years ago. He spoke of a middle way, not the way of harsh control, not the way of giving up entirely, but something in between. Something gentler, something wiser. Before he found this middle way, he had tried the path of extreme discipline, denying himself food and comfort, pushing his body to its limits, trying to overcome his own nature by sheer force. And it did not work. He grew thin and tired, but no closer to peace. What he discovered, sitting quietly beneath a tree on a cool evening, was something else entirely. Not that the answer was to try harder, but that the answer was to see more clearly, to bring a different quality of attention to the struggle itself, not the attention of a warrior, the attention of a healer. And that seeing begins with a shift in how we relate to the very thing we are struggling with. Let us explore what this shift looks like. There is a story about a young woman who loved to make pottery. She had a small studio in the back of her home, and she spent hours there, shaping bowls and vases from wet clay. She was good at it. Her hands knew the clay the way a musician's hands know their instrument. People admired her work, but she had one problem. Whenever she sat down at the wheel, a voice inside her would start up. This one will not be as good as the last one. The glaze will be uneven. The shape will be off. Everyone will see that you are not as talented as they think. She knew this voice well. It had been with her for as long as she could remember. It followed her into every part of her life, not just the studio. It whispered when she spoke in a group. It muttered when she looked in the mirror. It hummed quietly in the background of even her happiest moments, like a low, persistent note that colored everything. She had tried everything to silence it. She had argued with it. She had told herself it was wrong. She had filled notebooks with affirmations, writing the opposite of everything the voice said. She had punished herself for listening to it, calling herself weak, telling herself to just get over it. Nothing worked. The voice always came back. And each time it returned, it felt like proof that she was failing. Then one autumn, she visited an old potter in a village in the hills. He was famous for his work, and she wanted to learn from him. She arrived at his studio expecting to talk about technique, about glazes and firing temperatures and the right kind of clay. Instead, the old man invited her to sit and have tea. After a while, she confessed her problem. The voice, the doubt, the feeling that she could never quite be good enough. The old potter listened carefully. When she was finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something she did not expect. "Have you ever thanked it?" She stared at him. "Thanked it? Why would I thank the thing that makes me miserable?" "Because it is trying to protect you," he said simply. "It does not want you to be hurt. It does not want you to fail in front of others. It does not want you to feel the pain of falling short. It is doing a clumsy job, yes, but its intention is not cruelty. Its intention is safety." She sat with that for a moment. It had never occurred to her to see the voice that way. She had always treated it as an enemy, as something to be defeated. What would happen, the old potter said, if instead of fighting it, you simply said, "I hear you. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. But I am going to sit down at the wheel now, and I am going to see what happens." Would the voice go away? She asked. "Perhaps not," he said, "but you might stop being at war with it." And a potter who is not at war with herself makes much better pots. This is the shift, and it is so quiet, so subtle, that you might miss it if you are not paying attention. But it changes everything. The shift is from, "I must defeat this," to, "I can be curious about this." From, "What is wrong with me?" to, "What is this trying to tell me?" From I should be able to control this to this is a place in me that is asking for more kindness. There is a line from a Zen teaching that says, "The way out is through." But perhaps it would be even more accurate to say, the way out is a change in how we walk through. When we approach our stuck places with harshness, with the sharp, urgent energy of, "I need to fix this right now," we are operating from the same tight, contracted place that created the pattern in the first place. It is like trying to untie a knot by pulling harder on the rope. The harder we pull, the tighter the knot becomes. But when we approach with gentleness, with genuine curiosity, with the kind of open attention that does not demand results, something shifts in the whole system. The knot does not tighten. It begins, slowly, on its own time, to loosen. This is not a trick. It is not a technique designed to manipulate ourselves into changing. It is simply the natural result of bringing warmth to a place that has been cold. The way a frozen stream begins to flow again when spring arrives. Spring does not argue with the ice. It does not shame the ice for being frozen. It does not stand beside the stream and say, "You should be flowing by now. What is wrong with you? All the other streams are flowing." It simply warms the air, gently, patiently, and the ice responds in its own time, in its own way. We have all felt this in small ways. Think of a time when someone listened to you without trying to fix you. Really listened. Not offering advice. Not rushing to solutions. Just being with you in whatever you were feeling. Do you remember what happened inside you? Something softened, did it not? Something unclenched. Not because they solved your problem, but because you felt met. You felt held. You felt that someone was present with you in the difficulty, and that presence itself was the warmth. This is what we are learning to offer ourselves. Not a fix, not a cure, just presence, just warmth, just the willingness to sit beside our own frozen stream and say, "I am here. Take all the time you need." There is a teaching from an old Buddhist master that puts this beautifully. He said, "We see ourselves clinging and we know it, but we still cannot let go. This already is most of the path." Think about that for a moment. Just seeing the pattern, just recognizing the clinging, without being able to change it yet, that is already most of the journey. Not all of it, but most of it. Because the seeing is the warmth. The seeing is the spring. And once the warmth is there, the melting has already begun, even if we cannot see it yet. This is such a kind teaching. It takes all the pressure off. You do not have to be able to let go right now. You just have to see. And the seeing, over time, in its own way, does the rest. It is like planting a seed. You place it in the soil. You water it. And then you wait. You do not dig it up every morning to check if it is growing. You do not yell at it for being slow. You do not compare it to the seed your neighbor planted. You trust the process. You trust the soil and the water and the sun and the ancient, patient intelligence of the seed itself, which has been growing things since long before any of us were here. And one morning, you walk outside, and there is a green shoot, tender and new, reaching toward the light. It was growing the whole time. You just could not see it yet. Your awareness is the water. Your kindness is the sun. And the seed is already planted. It has been planted your whole life. You do not need to force it. You just need to stop standing in its light. Let us return to the young potter for a moment. She went home from the old man's studio that autumn and sat down at her wheel. The light in her studio was soft and golden, the way autumn light is, and the air smelled of wet clay and the last of the season's rain. The voice was there as always, as familiar as her own breath. This will not be good enough. You are not good enough. You never have been. But this time, instead of fighting it, she did something different. She let it be there. She did not agree with it. She did not argue with it. She did not try to drown it out with louder thoughts or bury it under affirmations. She simply noticed it, the way you might notice rain on the window while you are reading a book. Present, audible, but not in charge. I hear you, she whispered. Not to anyone else, just to herself. To that scared, protective part of her that had been shouting warnings for as long as she could remember. I hear you. You have been working so hard to keep me safe. And I am going to make a pot now. She placed her hands on the clay. It was cool and damp and familiar, and something in her settled at the touch. This was what her hands knew. This was what they had always known. The wheel began to turn, and the clay began to rise between her fingers, and she felt the world narrow down to this single, simple thing. Hands, clay, turning. And as she worked, something happened that she had not expected. The voice did not disappear, but it grew quieter, not because she had silenced it, because she had stopped giving it her full attention. She had turned her awareness, gently, kindly, toward the clay, toward the turning wheel, toward her hands and what they knew how to do. And in that turning toward, the voice simply had less room. Not no room, just less. And that was enough. The pot she made that day was one of her finest. Not because the doubt was gone, but because she was no longer at war with it. She had stopped pushing the door outward. She had turned around and walked through. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to peace. Peace is the path." And perhaps this is what he meant. We do not arrive at freedom after a long struggle. Freedom is what appears when we stop struggling. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when all our habits are cured and all our doubts are resolved. Right now, in this breath, in this moment of choosing kindness over combat. There is a small Zen story that carries this spirit beautifully. A student asked his teacher, "What is the secret to a happy life?" The teacher said, "Attention." "Yes, but what else?" "Attention. Surely there is more to it than that." The teacher smiled. "Attention. That is the whole secret. Not a fierce, straining attention. Not a critical, searching attention, but a warm, open, curious attention. The kind that says, 'Tell me more.' The kind that says, 'I am interested in what is happening here.' The kind that looks at a habit, a fear, a doubt, and instead of flinching, leans in just slightly and says, 'I see you. You are welcome here. Now, let us see what happens.' This is the door opening inward. This is the shift, and it is available to you in every single moment, no matter how stuck you feel, no matter how long you have been pushing, no matter how many times you have tried and given up. The door was never locked. It was just waiting for you to try the other direction. Let us rest here for a moment. Let these words settle gently. And when you are ready, we will continue together. In the dry season, the earth cracks. If you have ever seen it, you know how it looks. The soil splits into patterns, like a puzzle pulling apart. The ground that was once soft becomes hard and closed, and nothing seems to grow. The earth is waiting, not broken, just thirsty, just waiting for rain. And when the rain finally comes, something extraordinary happens. It does not happen all at once. The first drops fall, and the hard ground resists. The water beads on the surface, rolls into the cracks, and for a moment it seems like the rain will not make any difference at all. The earth is too hard, too dry, too closed. But the rain keeps falling, gently, patiently, drop after drop after drop, and slowly the ground softens. The cracks begin to fill. The hard surface gives way, and the water sinks in, deeper and deeper, reaching places that have not been touched in a long, long time. And then, almost overnight, green things appear. Tiny shoots, small flowers, life that was waiting just beneath the surface, needing nothing but water to wake up. If you have ever watched this happen, in a garden, or a field, or a patch of earth beside a road, you know there is something deeply moving about it. The patience of it. The way the earth does not need to be taught how to grow. It simply needs to be given what it has been missing. And then it remembers. All on its own, it remembers. This is a beautiful way to understand what happens when we bring attention and tenderness to the places in us that have been dry for a long time. The places that are cracked and hard and closed. Not because life has treated us badly, necessarily, but simply because life is life, and all of us accumulate dry places over time. Places where old pain hardened into habit. Places where we stopped feeling because feeling was too much. Places where we built walls that were meant to be temporary and then forgot they were there. These places are not beyond hope. They are not permanent. They are simply waiting for something gentle enough to reach them. And this is what we are going to explore now. What happens when the rain comes? There is a story about a young person who struggled for several years with a difficult relationship with food. It began quietly enough, the way these things often do. A stressful time in life, a lot of uncertainty, and the discovery that eating certain things brought a kind of comfort, a warmth, a temporary feeling of fullness that was not just physical but emotional. For a little while, the world felt less overwhelming. The edges softened. The noise quieted. But the comfort never lasted. It faded quickly, the way a candle flickers and goes out, and in its wake came something else. A heaviness. A shame that settled into the body like wet sand. Not a sharp, dramatic shame. More like a fog that crept in and colored everything gray. And so the cycle would begin again. The stress, the reaching for comfort, the brief relief, the shame, and then the reaching again. Because the shame itself was something that needed soothing. And the only soothing this person knew was the very thing that brought the shame. It was a circle with no exit. Or so it seemed. This person tried everything to break the pattern. They made rules. They made promises to themselves, serious, heartfelt promises, the kind you make at midnight or on the first day of a new year. They used willpower the way you use a dam to hold back water, and for a while it held, and then it broke, and the flood came, and they felt worse than before. They tried different approaches, different strategies, different books with bright covers and confident titles. They told themselves they just needed to be stronger, more disciplined, more in control. Nothing worked. And the hardest part, the part that made the whole thing so much heavier than it needed to be, was the feeling that it was their fault, that they were weak, that other people managed their lives just fine, and something must be wrong with them at some deep, unfixable level. A flaw in the foundation, a crack that went all the way down. The shame became almost worse than the habit itself. It wrapped around everything. It colored every meal, every mirror, every quiet moment alone. It whispered constantly, "You should be able to control this. What is wrong with you? Why can you not just stop?" And here is the thing about shame that is so important to understand. Shame does not help. It never has. Shame does not motivate us to change. It makes us smaller. It makes us hide. And it sends us running, again and again, to whatever will make the terrible feeling stop, even for a few minutes. Shame is not the cure for the habit. Shame is the fuel. Now, here is where the story turns. And it turns not with a dramatic breakthrough or a sudden moment of strength, but with something much quieter, much simpler. This person, over time, began to learn a different way of being with what was happening inside them. Not fighting it, not trying to control it, just being with it. It started with a shift so small it almost did not register. Instead of immediately reaching for the old comfort when the stress arrived, they paused. Just for a breath. Not to resist. Not to white-knuckle through the craving. Just to notice. Oh, here it is again. The wanting. And in that pause, instead of judging, they got curious. What was the wanting really about? What was underneath it? This is the beginning of something very simple and very powerful that the Buddhist tradition offers. It does not have a complicated name. Think of it as a way of being with difficult feelings, like a gentle rain falling on dry ground. It has 4 parts, and they flow naturally into each other, the way water flows downhill. The first is simply recognizing what is happening, naming it. Oh, this is craving, or this is anxiety, or this is sadness. Just saying what it is, the way you might say, it is raining. Not with judgment, not with alarm, just with the simple honesty of naming what is true. There is an old saying that if you can name something, it begins to lose its power over you. Not because the naming is magical, but because the naming means someone is watching, someone is home, and that changes the whole situation. The second is allowing it to be there. This is the part most of us find the hardest, because our whole lives we have been taught to fix things, to solve problems, to make bad feelings go away. But allowing means something radical. It means letting the feeling be there without doing anything about it. Not pushing it away, not pulling it closer, just letting it sit in the room with you, like a guest you did not invite, but who is here nonetheless. The third is looking a little deeper, with gentleness, with curiosity, not with a flashlight and a clipboard, but more the way you might sit beside a friend who is upset and simply ask, what is it? What is really going on? When we look beneath the surface of our habits, beneath the craving or the anger or the worry, we almost always find something tender, something vulnerable, an old need that was never quite met, a longing for safety, for love, for the feeling that we are enough. And the fourth, which flows from the third like water from a spring, is to offer that tender place what it actually needs. Not the quick fix, not the old comfort, but something deeper, kindness, understanding, the simple message, you are not broken, you are not wrong, you are just hurting, and I am here. These 4 movements are not a formula. They are not steps to be memorized and performed in order. They are more like the natural unfolding of what happens when a compassionate person sits down beside someone who is suffering. First, they see, then they accept, then they listen, and then they care. It is what love does, and this is simply love turned inward. Let us return to our story. This young person, sitting with the craving, began to look underneath it. Not all at once. It happened gradually, over many months, the way you slowly learn the landscape of a place you have moved to. At first, what they found was discomfort, a restless, agitated feeling that did not want to be still. But as they stayed with it, gently, without forcing anything, something deeper revealed itself. Beneath the craving, they found sadness. And beneath the sadness, they found something they had not expected. A deep, old feeling of not being enough. A feeling so familiar it was like the wallpaper in a room they had lived in their whole life. They had stopped seeing it, but it was there, covering everything. A quiet, persistent belief that they were somehow less than, somehow flawed in a way that could not be fixed. This is what the old, wise teachers mean when they talk about unmet needs. Somewhere in this person's life, perhaps very early, the need to feel worthy, to feel lovable, just as they were, had not been fully met. And the eating, the reaching, the comfort, it was all an attempt, a very human and understandable attempt to fill that empty place, not out of weakness, out of love, out of a deep desire to be okay. When this person saw this, really saw it, something shifted. Not the harsh seeing of judgment, not the cold seeing of analysis, a warm seeing, a tender seeing, the kind of seeing that says, oh, I understand now. And from that understanding, almost without effort, a question arose. It came from somewhere deep and quiet, from the wisest part of them. What does this place need? What does this young, hurting part of me actually need? And the answer was so simple it nearly brought them to tears. It needed to know it was loved. It needed to hear that it was okay, that it was not broken, that it was not alone. So they offered that, not as a technique, not as a strategy, but the way you might hold a child who has been crying for a long time and has finally worn themselves out and just needs someone to say, I have got you. I am here. You can rest. They placed their hand on their own heart and they said, very quietly, I am sorry you have been hurting for so long. I am here now, and you are okay. You have always been okay. Now, something important needs to be said about what happened after this, because it is easy to imagine that this was a single, shining moment of breakthrough, and then everything was fine. It was not like that. The habit did not vanish overnight. The craving came back. The old patterns reasserted themselves. There were still difficult days and difficult nights. But something had changed, and it was this. The shame began to lift. Slowly, the way morning fog lifts when the sun is patient with it. And as the shame lifted, the cycle lost some of its power. Because it was the shame, more than anything else, that had been feeding the loop. Shame said, "You are terrible for doing this." And the terrible feeling drove the person back to the only comfort they knew. And the comfort brought more shame. And around it went. But when shame was replaced with understanding, when "what is wrong with me" became "what does this part of me need?" the loop began to slow. Not stop. Slow. And in the spaces that opened up, something new began to grow. A different relationship with themselves. A kinder one. A more patient one. The Buddha taught that hatred does not cease through hatred. It ceases through love. And this is true not only between people. It is true within a single human heart. The war with ourselves does not end through fiercer fighting. It ends through tenderness. There is a small moment in this story that is worth lingering on, because it carries a teaching all its own. After offering themselves that kindness, after the hand on the heart and the quiet words, this person paused. They did not rush back into their day. They did not check their phone or get up and start doing something. They just sat for a moment. Still. Present. And in that stillness, they noticed something. The grip had loosened. Not all the way, but enough. There was space now where there had been tightness. There was air where there had been constriction. And in that space, they could feel something warm and open, like a window that had been painted shut for years and had finally been cracked open, just a little, just enough to let the breeze in. This is what the old teachers describe as what happens after the rain. The hard ground has softened. The water has sunk in. And now, in the quiet that follows, the first green things are beginning to appear. This moment of quiet noticing after the tenderness is, in many ways, the most important moment of all. Because this is when we get a taste of who we are when we are not gripping, when the fist is open, when the war has paused. And what we find there is not emptiness. It is fullness, a warm, open awareness that does not need anything to be different than it is. A Buddhist teacher once described this by saying, "After the rain, everything blossoms." And that is exactly what it feels like. Like blossoming. Like the most natural thing in the world. Like coming home to a room that has always been there, that was always warm and lit, that we had simply forgotten the way to. There is a small story in the Zen tradition about a monk who spent years searching for enlightenment. He traveled to distant monasteries. He studied with famous teachers. He sat in meditation until his legs ached and his back burned. He pushed and strived and worked with all his might. Then one spring morning, he was walking through a garden, not meditating, not trying, just walking. And he saw a peach tree in bloom. The blossoms were so perfect, so utterly themselves, so completely at ease in their own flowering, that something in him cracked open. Not from effort, from beauty, from the simple recognition that the tree was not trying to blossom. It was simply doing what it naturally did when the conditions were right. And he laughed. He laughed because he had been looking everywhere for something that was already happening. The blossoming was not something he had to achieve. It was something he had to stop preventing. This is what happens when we meet our difficult places with gentleness instead of force. We stop preventing our own natural flowering. We soften the ground. We let the rain in. And then we get out of the way. Let us explore one more small story, because it shows how this same gentle approach works even in the quick, ordinary moments of a day. There is a story about a woman who was learning to be more patient with her own anger. She had a good heart, everyone said so, but she had a quick temper, and it frightened her sometimes how fast the heat could rise. She would say something sharp to her children or snap at her partner over something small, and then spend the rest of the evening feeling terrible about it. The anger and the guilt chased each other in circles. One evening, she was cooking dinner. It had been a long day. The kitchen was warm and messy, and the children were loud, and she could feel the familiar heat building in her chest. One of the children knocked over a glass of water, and it spread across the counter and dripped onto the floor, and she felt the anger flare like a match struck in a dark room. But this time, she caught it. Not before it arrived. She was not that quick yet. But just after, she felt the heat, and she recognized it. Oh, she thought, here it is. The anger. She did not try to push it away. She did not scold herself for feeling it. She just stood there for a moment, a dish towel in her hand, water dripping on her feet, and she let the anger be there. She let it fill her chest and her throat and her clenched jaw. And then, very gently, she looked underneath. And what she found surprised her. It was not really anger at all. It was exhaustion. It was the weight of a day that had asked too much of her. It was a longing to be taken care of, to be the one someone cleaned up after, just once. It was a tiredness so deep it had disguised itself as fury. Oh, she said softly, you are just tired. And something in her chest unclenched. Not all the way, but enough that when she looked at her child, standing there with round, worried eyes, she could smile. She could kneel down and say, "It is all right, sweetheart. Let us clean this up together." The anger did not disappear forever. It came back. It always does. But each time she met it with that gentle curiosity, each time she looked underneath and found the tiredness or the longing or the need, it lost a little of its sharpness. It became less like a fire and more like a signal, a messenger arriving to tell her something she needed to know. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When we are angry, we are not usually angry for the reason we think." And this is so often true. The surface emotion is like the tip of something larger, and when we have the courage to look below the surface, gently, without judgment, we find something much more tender. And that tender thing is not our enemy. It is our teacher. So tonight, as you rest, you might simply hold the image of rain falling on dry ground. You do not have to do anything with it. You do not have to practice anything or remember any steps. Just hold the image. Let it be something quiet and good in the background of your mind. The rain falls. The earth softens. Something begins to grow. Whatever in you is dry and cracked and waiting, it is not beyond reach. It is not broken beyond repair. It is simply thirsty. And the rain it is waiting for is nothing more than your own gentle, kind attention. Your willingness to look beneath the surface. Your willingness to ask, what does this part of me need? And to listen, truly listen, to the answer. The Buddha said, "Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of that candle will not be shortened." Happiness never decreases by being shared. And the same is true of kindness. The kindness you offer yourself does not diminish you. It grows you. It waters you. It lets you bloom. That is enough. It has always been enough. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the quiet settle around you. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Sometimes, after all the learning and all the searching, the thing that finally changes us is the simplest thing in the world. Not a book, not a teacher, not a breakthrough, just a moment. A single quiet moment when something inside us opens, the way a hand opens when it has been holding on for a very long time and finally forgets why. There is a story about a woman. We do not know much about her. We do not know her name, or where she lived, or what she did for a living. We only know what happened to her one day, and it is enough. She let go. She did not plan it. She did not mark a date on a calendar or announce it to anyone. She did not read one more book about how to do it, did not attend one more class, did not ask one more person for advice. She did not journal about it, or make a list of pros and cons, or promise herself that this time, it would be different. She just let go. She let go of the fear that had been sitting on her chest like a stone for as long as she could remember. Not a dramatic fear, not the fear of something sudden and terrible. The quiet, everyday fear. The fear that she was not keeping up. The fear that she would be found out. The fear that the people she loved would one day look at her and see what she saw when she looked in the mirror on her worst days. She let go of the judgments, the ones she had been making about herself, that she was too much of this and not enough of that, and the ones she had been making about everyone else, measuring and comparing and keeping a silent ledger that no one had asked her to keep. She let go of all the opinions that swirled around her head like leaves caught in a wind that never stopped blowing. Other people's opinions about how she should live. Her own opinions about how other people should live. Opinions about opinions. The whole spinning, chattering, exhausting swarm of them. She let go of the committee of indecision that lived inside her. All those voices arguing about the right thing to do, the safe thing to do, the smart thing to do, until she could not hear her own heart anymore beneath all the noise. The committee had been in session for years, and it had never once reached a conclusion, and she finally let it adjourn. She let go of all the right reasons, all the careful calculations about how to do things properly, all the plans and strategies and backup plans for the backup plans. She let go of needing to know how the story would end before she was willing to live it. She let go of the memories that held her back. Not the memories themselves, which were part of her and always would be, but the grip of them. The way certain memories had become chains rather than stories. She let the chains fall and kept the stories, and the stories, unchained, became lighter than she ever imagined. She let go of the planning and the calculating and the constant, wearying effort of trying to do everything right. She did not promise to let go. She did not write the date in her calendar. She made no public announcement. She just let go. And she did this wholly, completely, without hesitation or worry. The way a tree drops a leaf in autumn, not because the tree has decided to, not because the tree has worked through its feelings about the leaf, but because the season has turned, and the letting go is simply what happens next. There is something in this story that touches a very deep place in us. perhaps because we recognize it, not as something we have done, but as something we long to do, something we can feel the possibility of, the way you can feel rain in the air before it arrives. We have spent so much of our lives holding on to how things should be, holding on to who we think we are, holding on to old hurts and old fears and old stories about ourselves that stopped being true a long time ago but that we keep carrying anyway, the way you might keep carrying an umbrella long after the rain has stopped, just in case. And we are tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, a deeper tired, the tiredness of a body that has been bracing for years, the tiredness of a mind that has been planning and worrying and calculating for so long that it has forgotten what it feels like to simply be still. What if it could be as simple as the woman in the story? What if letting go is not the end of a long struggle, but the moment after the struggle, when we are simply too tired to fight anymore, and we discover that the thing we were fighting was never as solid as we thought? The Buddha said, in the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? And maybe the deepest letting go is not letting go of something specific, not letting go of this fear, or that habit, or this old wound. Maybe the deepest letting go is letting go of the idea that we are supposed to be different than we are. Letting go of the whole project of self-improvement just for a moment and resting in the startling, simple truth that we are already whole. There is an old Zen story about a traveler who had been walking for many, many days. He carried a heavy pack on his back, filled with everything he thought he might need. Clothes for every kind of weather. Tools for problems he had not yet encountered. Books he had read and books he intended to read. Maps of places he might visit someday. Medicines for illnesses he did not have. And gifts, many gifts, things people had given him along the way that he could not bring himself to leave behind, because leaving them behind felt like leaving behind the people who had given them. The pack grew heavier with every mile. His shoulders ached. His back bent forward under the weight. He walked more slowly each day, and some days he barely walked at all, just sat by the road, resting, staring at the pack, wondering how he had accumulated so much. But he kept going, because he believed that he needed everything in it. That, without this particular tool or that particular book, he would be unprepared. That the world would present him with a situation he could not handle, and he would reach for the thing he needed and find it gone. One evening, he came to a river. It was wide and calm, and the water caught the last of the light, so that the whole surface shimmered like something alive. On the other side, he could see a meadow full of wildflowers, golden and purple and white, bending gently in a breeze that carried the smell of warm grass. A small boat was tied to the bank, but the boat was very small, and the pack was very heavy, and he could see right away that he could not take both. He stood there for a long time. The light changed. The shadows grew longer. The flowers on the other side swayed in a breeze he could not feel from where he stood. A bird sang a song he almost recognized, something from his childhood perhaps, some half-remembered melody that made his throat ache. An old woman was sitting nearby, mending a net. She had been watching him. "That is a heavy pack," she said. "It is," he agreed. "What is in it?" He started to explain, but the list was so long and so tangled that he stopped halfway through and just shook his head. "Everything," he said. "Everything I might need." The old woman nodded. "And has it made the walking easy?" He looked at her. He looked at the pack. He looked at the river and the meadow on the other side and the little boat that could carry him there if only he were light enough. And then, very slowly, he set the pack down. He did not sort through it. He did not take out the important things and leave the rest. He set the whole thing down, all of it, right there on the bank. And he stepped into the boat. The boat was so light without the pack that it nearly flew across the water. The air on the river was cool and sweet, and the current carried him gently, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he was not working. He was just moving, carried. When he reached the other side and stepped into the meadow, he stood for a moment, feeling the grass under his bare feet and the breeze on his face and the immense, dizzying freedom of having nothing on his back. And he realized something that made him laugh out loud. He could not remember what was in the pack. He could not remember a single thing. Whatever it had held, it was not his anymore. And he was lighter than he had been in years. This is what letting go feels like when it finally happens. Not loss, not sacrifice, not giving something up. Lightness, the astonishing lightness of setting down what we never needed to carry. Now, there is something important to understand about the woman in our story. She did not let go because she figured everything out. She did not let go because she had finally achieved the right state of mind, or reached some elevated spiritual level, or meditated for the right number of hours. She let go because she was ready. And readiness is not something we can manufacture. It is something that ripens, the way fruit ripens, slowly, invisibly, and then all at once. You cannot rush the ripening. You cannot stand beneath the tree and demand that the apple fall. But you can do what the tree does. You can keep your roots in the soil. You can keep turning toward the light. You can keep drawing water up from the deep places. And you can trust that the fruit knows when it is time. Everything we have been exploring tonight, the noticing, the gentleness, the willingness to look underneath our habits and meet what we find there with kindness, all of it is part of the ripening. Every moment of awareness, no matter how small. Every breath of self-compassion, no matter how brief. Every time we catch ourselves clenching and simply notice, without judgment, oh, there I go again. All of it is the fruit growing heavier on the branch. All of it matters, even when it does not feel like it. Especially when it does not feel like it. And then one day, without drama, without fanfare, without anyone watching, the fruit falls. There was no effort. There was no struggle. It was not good and it was not bad. It was what it was. And it is just that. A great Zen master once said, "If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace." This is not a demand. It is a promise. A gentle, patient promise that says, whenever you are ready, peace is here. It has always been here. It is what remains when the holding stops. Let us return to our woman one more time. When she let go, no one was around. There was no applause, no congratulations. No one thanked her or praised her. No one noticed a thing. It happened in perfect privacy, the way the most important things in life often do. The way a heart heals. The way forgiveness arrives. The way you realize one morning that you are no longer carrying something you carried for years, and you cannot even say when you set it down. Like a leaf falling from a tree, she just let go. And what happened then was very quiet and very beautiful. A small smile came over her face. Not the kind of smile you put on for other people. The kind that comes from somewhere deep inside, from a place that has been closed for a long time and has finally, gently opened. A lightness moved through her. A warmth. Something like the feeling of stepping out of a dark room into sunlight. Not a blinding, overwhelming light. A soft one. A kind one. The kind that does not demand anything. The kind that simply says welcome. And in that light, she could feel everything and resist nothing. The sadness that was there, she let it be. The joy that was there, she let it be. The uncertainty, the tenderness, the strange and wonderful fact of being alive in a body on a small blue planet spinning through space, she let it all be. She let it all be. And the sun and the moon shone forevermore. This is what the whole journey has been pointing toward. Not a destination. Not a finish line. Not a golden trophy that says, "Congratulations, you have officially let go." But this willingness to let things be as they are. This quiet courage to stop fighting the world and ourselves and simply rest in what is. It does not look dramatic from the outside. No one may notice. Your life may look exactly the same tomorrow as it did today. But something inside will have shifted, even if it is so subtle that only you can feel it. A little more space where there was tightness. A little more warmth where there was cold. A little more willingness to let the moment be what it is, without needing it to be something else. The Buddha called this peace. Not the peace of everything going right. Not the peace of having no problems. Not the peace of sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop while the world spins quietly below. But the peace that exists beneath all of it, like the stillness at the bottom of the ocean, undisturbed by whatever storms are moving across the surface. The peace that is already here, in this breath, in this body, in this very ordinary, very extraordinary moment. You have this peace in you right now. You have had it all along. It was there when you were worrying. It was there when you were afraid. It was there when you were gripping and reaching and trying so hard to hold everything together. It was there underneath, patient and quiet and vast, the way the earth is patient beneath the snow, waiting for you to stop long enough to notice. You do not have to create it. You do not have to earn it. You only have to let yourself rest in it. The way you would rest in a warm bath at the end of a long day. The way you would rest in the arms of someone who loves you completely and asks nothing in return. The way the earth rests when winter comes, still and deep, trusting that spring will follow because it always has. There is a teaching that says we are always already free. That freedom is not something we move toward. It is something we remember. Like a dreamer who wakes up and realizes they were safe in bed the whole time. The dream was vivid. The dream was convincing. The dream may even have been beautiful in places, or frightening, or strange. But it was always a dream. And the bed was always there, warm and steady and holding you. Tonight, if only for this moment, you can rest in that bed. You can let the dreams be dreams. You can let the stories be stories. You can let the fears and the habits and the old familiar patterns be exactly what they are. Clouds in a vast sky. Waves on a deep ocean. Leaves falling from an ancient tree, spinning slowly in the golden light, finding their way to the ground, in their own time, in their own way. They are not you. They never were. You are the sky. You are the ocean. You are the vast, open awareness in which all of it arises and passes and arises again. And that awareness is not cold or empty. It is made of something very warm and very kind. Call it awareness. Call it love. Call it the part of you that has been listening to these words tonight, and quietly, without effort, without trying, understanding. There is a final Zen story that seems right for this moment. A student asked a master, "What is the meaning of it all?" And the master said, "Have you eaten your supper?" "Yes," the student said. "Then wash your bowl. That is all. No grand revelation. No fireworks. Just this. Just the next simple, ordinary, beautiful thing. Wash your bowl. Feel the warm water. Notice the light on the soap bubbles. Be here. Be kind. Let go. And when there is nothing left to hold and nothing left to fight, what remains is not emptiness. It is fullness. The fullness of a life lived with open hands and an open heart. The fullness of a breath taken without worry. The fullness of a leaf that knows exactly how to fall. Let us rest here now. Let everything settle, like snow falling on still water. Let the words fade gently, the way the last light of evening fades, not with a sharp edge, but with a slow, golden softening. And when you are ready, we will close this journey together. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for listening, for resting, for allowing these words and stories to wash over you. Whatever you carry, whatever habits or fears or old familiar patterns are part of your life right now, know that you have already taken the most important step. You showed up, you listened, and something in you, whether you felt it or not, has softened. Letting go is not something you do once. It is something that happens again and again, in small and quiet ways, for the rest of your life. A breath you did not know you were holding, released. A thought you did not know you were gripping, noticed and let go. A moment of kindness toward yourself that you did not know you needed until it arrived. Drop by drop, the jug fills. Breath by breath, the heart opens. And one day, without planning it, or even noticing it at first, you realize that you are lighter than you used to be, that the world looks a little different, that the hands you used to clench are resting, open, in your lap. There is nothing more you need to do tonight. The stories will stay with you. The teachings will find you when you need them. And the peace that we touch together, even briefly, is always here. It does not leave. It is waiting, gently, for you to return. Rest now. Let it all be. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.